Dr. Ram is a world-recognized scientist on climate. He has made major achievements on environmental science, but for me the coolest title that he has is Champion of the Earth. And I'm sure everybody would like to have a title like that. He was recognized Champion of the Earth. For me, is the coolest title somebody could ever imagine in life. So Dr. Ram sent a video, and I'd like to ask our assistant to show the video.
I'd like to thank Professor Jack Fishman and Professor Peter Raven for inviting me to this important major summit on climate change. I'd like to start off by describing to you how we know what we know about climate change. The first thing you should note is that climate change science is intensely data-driven. Just to give my personal example, in late 1970s, I worked with NASA scientists and engineers to help launch this climate satellite. I believe this is the first of its kind, looking at the heat budget of the Earth. Then I moved on to making observations with ships, aircraft, surface stations, and the last 10 years, I've been using drones, lightweight drones, just about 6 feet wingtip to wingtip, with miniaturized instruments to study air pollution and how it impacts climate change. But there are hundreds of scientists who have done similarly intense observations. So what do we do with this data? One of the things we do is to use the data with models to make predictions. So about 37 years ago, I teamed up with a meteorologist and did a signal-to-noise detection study to see when will we detect this warming, if the theory is right. So our conclusion was we should see the CO2-induced warming by year 2000. And as you all know, it was in year 2001, 1,000 scientists commissioned by the United Nations concluded climate change is here. They said they are seeing a detectable warming signal globally. There were numerous other predictions by other scientists which were verified in the last 20, 30 years. But still, what convinced me was this impressive data set collected over the ocean, which I consider to be the smoking gun of climate change, particularly human-induced climate change. These were floats, about 3,800 floats are floating in the ocean as we speak. Every once in a while, it'll go down for a drink, collect data on temperature and salinity, beam it to satellite, and go back again. It is this data set which showed the entire ocean system is warming up to 1 kilometer thick. That is exactly what should be happening if our theory was right. So let me use all this knowledge to make some predictions. So these were predictions I made 1.5 years ago. The first thing is we need to know climate change is not something happening 100 years from now, not 50 years from now, but in 13 years, 13 years, the climate system would exceed the threshold for dangerous climate change. In about 33 years, there is a 50% probability for reaching 2-degree warming. But it doesn't stop there. We have to think about low probability. There is a 5% chance for catastrophic changes, and I'll talk to you about that. The climate change science now is moving to understand the health impacts. So the predictions with the 2-degree warming is that 3.5 billion people would be exposed to deadly heat more than 20 days in a year. Likewise, there will be several 100 million to 1 billion would be exposed to viruses, vector-borne disease like dengue, chikungunya, and 20 other viruses. Third one, which is most concerning for me, is the severe widespread droughts. Let's take a 5% look at the 5% probability of droughts. This is the prediction of what's called Drought Index by the Princeton University model. The study was done by Columbia University and NASA. And you can see much of North America would be subject to moderate to severe drought, to extreme drought. Most of Southern Europe, again, severe drought, as predicted, and Amazon. And look at South Africa, Australia. So basically, the region for growing food would be shrinking. If you want to use the astronomer's metaphor, the Goldilocks zone for planet Earth will be shrinking if we have emissions unchecked. This is a 5% probability. So you can ask, that's too low. Why should we care about that? If I tell you there is a 1 in 20 odds of that plane falling down, none of us would get on that plane. So that's what 5% probability means. Fortunately, it's not too late to solve the problem. There are plenty of scalable solutions that are available, and we have a decade to implement these solutions. Like what was said by Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. So we can do this. In fact, I want to give you 2 examples of solutions which are being proposed at the Pontifical Academy of Science at the Vatican. This was a meeting I helped organize with Professor Dasgupta, Archbishop Minerath of France, and Chancellor Marcello Sorondo. He is the Chancellor of the Pontifical Academy of Science. At the end of 3-day meeting, we briefed Pope Francis, and we came to a remarkable conclusion. It is remarkable for physical scientists and natural scientists to come to such a conclusion. First, we said finding ways to develop a sustainable relationship with our planet requires not only the engagement of scientists, political leaders, and civil societies, but ultimately it requires a moral revolution. We then claim that religious institutions can and should take the lead on bringing about such a new attitude towards creation. This was in 2014. Pope Francis released his Laudato Si after that. We held a meeting again last November of 2017, this time focusing on human health. This is where the climate science is going, focusing on estimating what's going to happen to us, our health. In this meeting, and you can see our Governor Jerry Brown from California speaking, Professor Peter Raven was also a part of this organizing committee. What we concluded in that meeting is that in addition to forming an alliance with religion, climate scientists and policymakers should bring in healthcare providers, because unchecked climate change is going to pose enormous risk to human health.